am glad to be with you guys on this Friday afternoon. Just kind of hanging out. Beautiful day here in Georgia. Looking forward to having a good weekend with my boys and my lovely wife, Hilda Marie. But I wanted to share something with you guys that genuinely is near and dear to my heart. Honestly, a difficult subject, but one that I think a lot of us are in the middle of right now. And what I want to talk about is businesses who have started in the last 12 months or businesses that are planning to start. If you're an entrepreneur, you're an aspiring entrepreneur, you want to start your business in the next 12 months. Uh, I want to talk about what's involved in that. Oftentimes what happens in times of crisis, um, lots of people who had secure jobs are either not in those secure jobs anymore or are realizing those jobs weren't as secure as they wanted, or as they thought they were, and so they make the leap. And other people see fresh opportunities. Other people see tumult in an industry and say, hey, there's something that we could do here. This might be the right time to start a business. And I really want to talk about that. Is this the right time to start a business? Particularly, is this the right time to start your business? Because the unfortunate reality of it is, in normal times, normal circumstances, 8 out of 10 new businesses fail. Um, it's just really, really hard. We call this period in the model that I use, predictable success, we call this early struggle. It's just a really difficult time. If you're on my email list, you'll know that we've been talking a little bit about this. And if you're not, go to 8figureFocus.com, check it out. There's a couple of articles in there, including the one that I'm talking about here today. Early struggle is, it's in good times, it's 3 to 5 years, and only 2 out of 10 businesses make it through. It's right now we like to glorify the process of starting a new business. We like to glorify entrepreneurism. Everybody and their brother has a side hustle or two, and all of that's wonderful. And I'm not necessarily talking about the side hustles or those hobby jobs, if you will. I'm talking about building a business. If you're saying, hey, I'm really in this to build something that especially something that's beyond me, something that's beyond just a new level of employment for myself. That's what we're talking about here. Now, again, if that's you, normal times, 80% chance of failure. I am expecting us to see, and others, in my line of work are expecting us to see that to jump to about 1 in 20 making it, instead of maybe 4 in 20. We're going to go all the way down to 1 in 20. It's about 95% chance of failure. And, it's one thing to talk about statistics and numbers. It's another thing when it really hits home and someone that's near and dear to your heart. And I actually remember it was Friday morning, March 20th. Friday the 13th had just happened back in March. And, Trump's travel ban goes into effect, and basically the world shuts down. And I was sitting in my office, kind of wondering, what's going to happen, what's going on, and I got an email from a friend of mine who was in the process of launching her business, and the subject line was, "Do I have a business?" And before I could even read it, I just had to pause for a moment, because just the sobriety of what was happening, the reality of what was happening. This isn't something that's happening in the news; it's happening in real people's lives, and as I opened up the email and went through it, this is someone who had started other businesses in the past, wildly successful. But in the course of 1 week, she had lost 4 major clients. And one of the lines that really stood out to me in the article was, "I don't know if I have a business anymore, but I think that's the feeling most small business owners have right now." And it's so true. Since that time, I've had around 80 consultations that I've done, and many of them with business owners who had just started out, who were thinking about just starting out. And I can tell you time and time again how difficult and how present the difficulty is uh,,,, in, 'in times like these. Now, 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80% 80 we all know it's difficult. It's obviously, very difficult for some in this moment. But I do want to pause and say just for a second, for those who do make it, there's actually a fantastic reward. And the thing that I've been telling many folks is, first off, it's not necessarily over. If there's one thing that you could take from this, it's that you actually have a choice in how you proceed with this. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to start a new business. You don't have to let your new business die. I genuinely believe that it's up to you to decide. And I feel like we make our best decisions when we actually decide between options rather than following a forced choice. And so, proof of that, okay, Uber, Airbnb, Slack, Warby Parker, Venmo, right? Every single one of those organizations started, 2007, 2008, 2009 timeframe in the wake of the Great Recession, right? These are all massive companies now, wildly successful. They have their roots in a really difficult time, and it's not really all that unique to the Great Recession. I mean, if you wind back, businesses like HP, Hyatt, Microsoft, all of these, enduring brands, these lasting institutions started in the midst of times of crisis. And so, anyone out there says, hey, you can't start a business right now, they're wrong. Anyone out there who says you should start a business, I think there's some scrutiny that we need to add to that so that you can really make the right choice. Because, like I said, most new businesses are going to fail. And I'd rather see someone recognize that before it happens than to find out in the midst of it. Because once you start, the further you go from that point of starting, the harder it gets to walk away, and the more expensive the lesson is to learn if you do indeed fail. A couple other things that really help. So if you do choose to move forward, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there's two things. One, it's so hard to do that if you do make it, there's this, Darwinian effect of, survival of the fittest. And if you can get your business through early struggle in times like these, it actually builds something into the very fiber of the organization. It builds something into the DNA of the business that is the reason for the success of the businesses that I listed beforehand. Second part of this is if you can beat the clock, right? If you can find, in early struggle, it's all about finding a profitable, sustainable market and doing that before cash runs out. So really, if you can focus in, if you can beat the clock, if you can strike gold, if you will, and find that market for your product or service, if you can find one that not only is selling to a handful of people up front, but is really a profitable way of continuing to sell to people for the long haul, finding not a way to sell, but a market to sell to. And if you can do that, one of the fantastic things about starting a business in times like these is you can ride the rising tide back up after the crisis as we recover, and you can hit double, triple digit growth year after year. Back in 2007, 2008 crisis, or 2008 crisis, we actually relaunched the last business that I was with, and we were able to do it. We were able to find that market. It was a lot of hard work. We didn't get paid for quite a while, but we hit nearly 300% growth in just a few years as we were riding out of it. And a big part of that was riding the rising tide of the economy. But before you can get to any of that, there really is this reality that as much as you and I want to be the exception, that's the exception, and the hard reality about businesses that are starting now, and the reason that the failure rate goes up so much, is that economic crisis forces a lot of people to start businesses because they think it's their only choice. Some, they think it's their best choice, but really the result of that is a crazy number of people who genuinely have no business starting a new business, go into the business of starting a new business and find out the hard way that was just not the right decision. And it goes back to what I said before. If you're making if you have a forced choice, it's very rarely the right decision. And we'll talk about that more in a second. What makes it so hard right now? Outside of the obvious, if you're trying to start a retail store, that's going to be very difficult. If you're starting an event business, or if your business is dependent on events for sales, it's going to be very challenging. But beyond that, there are realities that make starting a business in the midst of crisis very, very difficult. And the first one, I mean, it's obvious, but we can't ignore it, and it's that cash is scarce, right? Cash is the lifeblood of a startup, and many people who are starting businesses right now, I read a statistic back in March that the average business that had already started had about 17 days of cash reserves in the bank account. Only 17 days. And a big part of the race to get the PPP loans out and all of that insanity was around that idea that these businesses simply did not have any cash on hand at all. Beyond cash in a business, when you're starting, most of that cash is coming out of your pocket. And if you're one of those folks who feel like you're being forced into starting your own business because you've lost your job, which is just a horrible situation, you really want to be cautious, because starting up a new business takes cash. I mean, just 100% of the time it takes work and it takes cash, and it takes more of both of them than you'd ever expect. And it's getting harder and harder to self-fund, as the ability to make money comes in, is diminished. And it also gets harder and harder to find money. We have a couple of government programs for organizations that have been around for a year or so, but for those who are brand new, it's just not there. And bank lending is definitely tightening in some areas, particularly with new businesses right now. Second part of this, and I think this has to do with the situation that we're having right now, in a big debate, and regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, it doesn't matter. Basically, this is going to last for a while, right? And what we do between now and then is for people much smarter than me to decide. But I think genuinely we're looking at 6 to 12 months of disruption in some form or another. And if you're starting a business, that's just the start. Normal circumstances, business can take 3 to 5 years to really get out of the early struggle period, to find its profitable, sustainable market and start turning a profit on a regular basis. So you're stunting that growth by at least 6 to 12 months, and then some. Just depending on what happens after all of this. And so again, cash is tough. The timeline is just very, very tough right now to be able to build a market. Other things that are going on, we'll get to that in a second, but here's what it comes down to, and here's the heart of what I want to share today. And that is, you really have 3 options. I don't care who you are. I think what you need to know, what you need to hear, is that you have options when it comes to starting your business. And I don't say that in any insensitive way. I don't say that to say any of this is easy. I feel it as I say this. And this is something that's very personal to me, very personal to a lot of people. But again, I'm going to say this again and again and again. If you don't have any options, you're going to make a bad decision. And so what I want you to do is recognize, and hopefully I can help you to recognize, there are 3 options that you have in front of you. First one, the hardest one, but unfortunately for most businesses, the right one is to either end the business now or don't even start it in the first place. And no one ever wants to say that. I don't want to say that. But the reality of it is, if you're going to start a business, you've got 5 years of trouble. You've got a lot of financial pressure over that time, and you have an incredible amount of what will be tirelessly long days and just endlessly fruitful hours of working between now and that. And uh, you know, as difficult as that is to hear, it's even more difficult to do. I mean, we're in the U.S., we're Americans. This is about as anti-American in a way as it can be. Giving up on your dream. I'm not talking about giving up on your dream. I'm not talking about that at all. But what I am talking about is just being honest with both the timing of the dream, with the reality of that dream, with the expression of that dream. If you have a dream to be in a certain industry or do a certain thing, is the only way to do that by starting your own business? No, most of the time it isn't. And most of the time that isn't the best way to do it. And so, uh, I don't want you to give up on your dream. I'm never going to recommend that. But I am going to say that if you've just started, it may be time to take a step back. And that really kind of blends into option number two. And that's this: you can put it on hold, right? Like I said, postponing doesn't mean you're giving up on your dreams. But what you can do now is put the public business on hold, put even the sales on hold. If you're without employment, don't wait for your new business to kick up. Really start looking for employment. If you've already started the business, you may need to pivot back into something else for a little while the dust settles on everything that's going on, and waiting for the right opportunity. Now, between now and then, the last thing you need to do is sit idle. So when I'm talking about waiting, I'm not talking about not doing anything. I'm genuinely talking about waiting for the right moment. And that's an active waiting. And what you can be doing between now and then is actively working on defining that market, right? We talked about early struggles, all about getting and finding and securing a profitable, sustainable market. If that's the case, then you can be spending your nights and weekends now really digging into that. You can spend your nights and weekends now crafting your sales and marketing strategies so that when the time comes to make the leap, you've done the hard work, and you can skip a lot of the heartache that you would have experienced otherwise. All right, third option, and despite as everything that I've said so far, a lot of new business owners are going to ignore that, and I understand why. I mean, in your heart, you are a visionary, and it's just what you do, and it's difficult to deny that portion of yourself. And so rather than throwing you out to the wild and say, hey, you didn't listen, what I want to do, I want to give you an idea of the strategy that you can use to really give your business the best shot. And there's a few different components that I want to talk through here, and we're just going to kind of work through them one at a time. And this is what I believe is going to help businesses, particularly in this crisis, given the nature of this crisis. And the first one is this: it's recognize that your old product is dead. That idea that you had to go to market is probably not going to work. Unless that idea came out after the COVID crisis hit, and somehow you found that golden opportunity, what you were planning to do before this crisis as a business is probably not viable right now. And this isn't all that unique to the crisis. Genuinely, what happens most of the time someone starts a new business is they spend the first year, maybe even the first year and a half or 2 years, trying to find the product and pivoting on idea after idea. There's lots in on social media and in business articles right now about pivoting. Everyone's talking about pivoting, and my personal opinion is most people are actually pivoting too much, or they're pivoting in the wrong way, and that's another thing for another time. But what I can say is all that talk of pivoting is massively important for brand new businesses. You really have to look at how you can add value, how you can leverage the expertise that you already have right now to help people in your market. The trick to this is that you really want to try and focus that, if at all possible, on the market you plan to be in. And so if you're, if you let's say you sell alcohol products, right? You sell gins and other liquors. Try and resist the urge to make hand sanitizer, right? Try and find a way of adding value to those people who will be clients after the crisis ends. Because the last thing you want to do is build a profitable market that is only profitable for as long as the crisis exists, because that's not sustainable. Maybe you'll make ends meet, but you'll find yourself back in the throes of early struggle as soon as the crisis starts to die down, and you'll have wasted a phenomenal amount of time along the way. So really don't want to do that. But you really do want to leverage the knowledge that you already have. And I've talked to so many people over the last 3 months who have so much to offer right now, who have so much experience and knowledge, and genuinely even have time that they can offer to folks. And it just takes taking a step back and really thinking about it critically and just saying, hey, this is what I wanted to do, but really this is who I want to serve, and here's how I can serve them now. Absolutely one of the best things that you can do for your business, especially in the short run to medium. Second part, directly related to that, you've got to be scrappy. One of the biggest advantages that you have right now, if you're starting a business, it's easy to see, you're not the big guy, you don't have all the cash, you don't have all these things, whatever that may be. Your distinct advantage right now is that you're nimble and you can turn faster than everyone else. And that's absolutely an advantage today. Many folks, especially folks who serve B2B, if you're starting a new business, you're in the B2B space, you can move, you can change, you can adapt, you can pivot much faster than your clients can. So do that for them, right? Be the pivot for them, and it'll go a long way. There's something I want to touch on with this, and there's 4 personality styles that we talk about. There's visionaries, operators, processors, and synergists. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the website. But operators is where I want to drill in here. And operators, we call them ruthless finishers, right? They love their checklist. They love checking things off the list and getting stuff done. And operators do scrappy all day, every day. They just crush it. And so if you're not an operator, try to pair up with one. If you have access to one, then get that operator on your team, because they are critical to being scrappy and doing it well. If you are not an operator, then you've got to focus on being like an operator, right? Focus on finishing. For many people who start businesses, they're visionaries and they tend to focus on starting or solving, but you have to focus as not like an operator on fixing and finishing. Make sure you have a daily routine in place where you're setting up, here are the things that we need to do today, and then following up on those and checking, did we get them done? And don't quit the day until the most important things are done. And keep your eyes and ears open to opportunity. It's going to come up. Remember, you're more nimble than everybody else. That's an asset, and so lean into that as best as you possibly can. The next thing here is focus. If you can do this is normally the opposite of what I recommend folks when they're starting a business. But right now I've noticed something that's very different about the environment that we're in, and it's changing. So in probably 3 months' time, this is going to be different. But right now, if you can focus on engagement over transactions, if you can focus on having great conversations, if you can focus on adding value right now, that's going to pay dividends in 3, 6, 12 months, whatever the time frame is. If your business is dependent on you getting a sale tomorrow, you need to go back to what I talked about on your 3 options, because acquiring new customers right now is massively difficult. However, getting the attention of people who wouldn't have given you a moment's time in January is much more likely. So if you can give away value for free, if you can do it, one of the things I use all the time with folks that I consult with is we'll use ebooks or video series or videos like this. Get online and get out there adding value for your clients. It's the long game. It is not an easy win. To be honest, it is a daily grind. It's going to feel tough. It's going to feel fruitless. But I promise you, if you find ways of adding value, even if it's free, even if you can't monetize it in the short run, but you can add value to people who are going to be in your market when this crisis ends, I promise you it's going to pay off. But you just have to focus on doing it again and again and again. And two more points here, and then we'll kind of wrap up. But the next one is this: you have to build a sales and marketing machine. So many folks who are going into business right now are focused on the product that they offer, or the service that they offer, or something about the way that they do business. It almost doesn't matter at all. What you have to focus on is whether or not you can sell your product or service. And yes, I just talked about engagement over sales. What I'm talking about here is building the machine that will help you sell. And you can do that today. If you focus on building engagement, and then you spend the rest of your time looking at what you're going to need to do in 3 to 6 months to transform that engagement into sales, and start pursuing an actual strategy that will be repeatable, something that you can maintain, the actual processes necessary, not just a fun ad that you were able to create. But if you can really build the systems and processes around marketing and sales specifically, then that's what's going to help you to get out of this crisis faster. Keeping in mind what I just mentioned about engagement, what I'm talking about here, marketing and sales, I am talking about still having sales calls, right? But focusing those sales calls on, 80-90% value and 10-20% sales. And the reason for that is, one, it's a great way to engage with clients. Speaking with them on the phone, doing Zoom sessions. If you can get face to face and everyone's happy with that, great. But getting out in front of clients in one way or another, especially one-on-one, is a brilliant way of boosting engagement right now. The second thing that it does is it's going to help you to key in on when clients are ready to buy. I work with folks all over the country, and right now, people in different parts of the country are experiencing this in completely different ways. Some places are completely unaffected, others are shut down, others think that they might be shut down. Different industries are experiencing this way. Different personalities are experiencing this in different ways. There is no one time that everyone is going to be ready to buy. But if you're on the phone doing the work now, getting together with clients as much as possible, you're going to put yourself in the best position to be there when they actually are ready to buy. A few other things that it does, it's going to help you to stress test the market viability of your product or service. So if you're able to have great conversations about something now, you're going to be far more likely to be able to sell it when the time comes. If you're not even able to have great conversations about it now, then you need to really look at, is that product idea dead? Is there something else I need to be doing? And so you can stress test that, you can pivot, you can stress test, you can pivot, and you're doing all of this now very rapidly by getting out there and focusing on engagement. The other thing it's going to do is going to help key you into opportunity again, and these all tie together, but that nimbleness that you have, right? If you're on the phone with clients, you have the highest amount of opportunity to recognize an opportunity. If you sit back and you focus on polishing the apple, right, making your product or service amazing, but you don't spend any time getting it out there, you stand the chance of creating a product or service that's completely out of touch with the reality on the ground, or with the opportunities that really exist today. A couple more points on this. If you are doing the work now, even though you're not selling yet, if you can build the muscle to be disciplined and diligent now, then as the sales start coming in, you'll have the momentum to keep the sales coming in on an ongoing basis. Because what happens for, especially for small businesses, especially if it's like a solopreneur kind of thing, all of a sudden there's a sale and you jump ship and go straight into doing mode, and then you forget to sell, and you fall into something we call the artisan trap. I wrote about it last week, but you can stay out of this artisan trap if you build the necessary muscle and process now to keep sales going even when it's difficult. And the final point that I have today, and this is a short but important one, is this. You have to find more support than you think you need. Visionaries are oftentimes highly driven. You're going out there, you're taking the risk, you're doing it alone. I promise you, no one can do this alone. No one can do this right now alone. And, the road ahead of you, it's going to be physically, mentally, emotionally exhausting. And you really need to start working now on building a support structure that'll pull you through those difficult times, because there will be difficult times. If you're married, your spouse has to be on board, but go out and focus as much on building the support around you as you would on building the business that you dream of, because it's that support that's going to be the infrastructure that holds it up. It's not the business itself. It's those people around you who are rooting for you, who can give you advice when you need it, who can give you support when you need it, who can just be there to listen when you need it. It's so important for business owners right now. Find other business leaders, find other people who are starting businesses, find a coach, find somebody that you can rely on, find someone who's been down that road before and started a business, and stay consistent with that. Build the support that you need moving forward. And so, that's it. Again, you have three choices. You can kill the business for now, before it's killed externally. You can just push pause and wait this out. And while you're pausing, really focus on building that sales and marketing machine. Or three, you can ignore the first half of this talk and go in and go all in. And if you do that, you've got to go all in. And if you go all in, focus on that nimbility, focus on sales and marketing, focus on engaging with and adding value to customers in the short run. And finally, do that with the support you need. And know this. If you choose to start right now, know that you have my full support, and anything that I can do, I'm rooting for you. We're going to be putting out a lot of resources over the coming weeks to do that. We have a couple already. We have a software program called How to Get Out of Early Struggle, which is as timely now as it is forever. But we've got some new things from the predictable success world coming out. When it comes to focusing on your sales and marketing, I would highly recommend looking into StoryBrand. It's the framework I use to help my clients to put together their sales and marketing materials. Fantastic. There's a book that you can get. There's a live event that you can attend. Find some of those tools. Find people who have been down that road and really lean into it. And until next time, I wish you the absolute most success, whether you start a business or not. Take care.